Sometimes, when we look in the mirror, we realize that what we see is not just our face. In fact, we can clearly see the weight of the years, the signs of sleepless nights, and even the shadow of our mind tired from thinking. Of course, no matter how strong we consider ourselves to be, time touches our faces like a silent teacher and, as a result, is gentle but ruthless. However, women in particular possess a great power to recall their youth. This is because youth is not only smooth skin, but also inner renewal, rebirth, or in essence, a return of vital energy. So there comes a time when we truly realize that the care we devote to ourselves is actually one of the most obvious manifestations of the value we place on ourselves. However, there is also a harsh reality to remember. Every day we neglect ourselves unfortunately leaves negative marks on our skin, and every treatment we put off will haunt us when we look back years later. To give an example, the neck, décolleté, hair, sleep, stress. All these aspects can be our allies in the fight against aging or easily abandon us. That's why the habits illustrated in this video are not just an aesthetic touch, but also a serious promise that a woman makes to herself. The phrase, "I will not neglect myself," is actually a kind of shield against the passing of the years. And let's not forget that beauty does not come from the outside, but first and foremost from a woman's attitude towards herself. And believe me, the stronger this attitude, the longer our face will remain young. Before moving on to the video, I would like to ask you to do one small thing. Write, "I am ready to shine again" in the comments. Because, believe me, writing it is not just any comment. It means making the promise you made to yourself visible, and above all, this determination greatly accelerates the transformation process. If you like, let's start with the first point right away. 1. Avoid hot showers at all costs, because heat damages the skin barrier. In fact, many of us think that the relaxing feeling of a hot shower can relieve the fatigue of the day. But if we look at it from another point of view, we are not at all happy with this situation. Because high heat dissolves the natural lipid layer of our skin in no time, i.e., in a few seconds, making it very vulnerable. Of course, when this protective layer disappears, our skin can dry out much more quickly and begin to suffer much more rapidly from external effects. The skin barrier, which is essential for a youthful appearance, unfortunately begins to weaken at these times, and the obvious signs of aging become much more apparent precisely during these moments of weakness. That is why we must not forget that the temperature of the shower plays a much more important role than we think. When it weakens, it not only manifests itself in dryness, but also in redness, tightness, and above all, a dull appearance. Of course, after the age of 30, this phenomenon becomes much more noticeable and we begin to perceive it. This is because our skin naturally begins to slow down its renewal process. In this way, the brief relief provided by hot water translates into a long-term effect that weighs on our skin. Of course, if a woman wants to maintain a youthful and vibrant appearance, she can turn this situation into a strategy by protecting the skin barrier. Therefore, lowering the temperature is actually one of the most important steps in this strategy. At first glance, this habit, which seems simple, actually produces very important changes for the health of our skin. Showering with lukewarm water, in fact, allows you to cleanse your skin without damaging its protective layer and, as many of you can imagine, minimizes moisture loss. Of course, this is particularly important for areas that show signs of aging more quickly, such as the face, neck, or décolleté. Think about how sensitive these areas are. The effect of hot water will naturally increase this sensitivity significantly. Let's not forget that lowering the water temperature acts in a way as a secret protective shield that preserves our skin's youthful reserves. What's more, a lukewarm shower has very positive effects not only on our skin, but also on our body's overall circulation and even our energy balance. In particular, since a sudden change in temperature causes a stress-like reaction in our body, this reaction can unfortunately cause an increase in hormones that cause inflammation of our skin. Lukewarm water, on the other hand, calms our skin and promotes circulation with a massage-like effect, making it much more vibrant, radiant, and above all, smoother. Of course, this is a natural reflection of a youthful appearance. I know, or at least I think, that this is one of the videos you've watched at least 3 times, maybe even more, on my channel, and if you haven't done so yet, I'm really sorry you haven't subscribed yet, because it's very important to me to see you here and to be able to continue this journey together. If you subscribe, not only will you give me your strongest support, but we'll never lose sight of each other. 2. Know your skin type well, because the wrong product can really be the biggest factor in aging. Let's think about a woman who doesn't know the real needs of her skin well. No matter how much this woman commits to skincare, no matter how hard she tries, her efforts can often be in vain. Because there is a critical point here. Skincare is not just about using products. What I mean is that you first need to understand the structure of your skin, what it tolerates, and what affects it most quickly. Of course, just as using products for dry skin on oily skin can alter its balance, I can give another example. Using strong acids on dry skin can cause damage to the same extent. Every treatment we do without knowing our skin creates a small but equally effective aging factor that significantly accelerates time. For this reason, the first step to a youthful appearance is, believe me, knowing how to interpret your skin correctly and clearly. Of course, the greatest strength that comes from knowing our skin type is the ability to eliminate unnecessary products. Think about it. Today's beauty world offers thousands of products, hundreds of promises, and above all, infinite radiance, doesn't it? But not every product is suitable for all skin types. And when you use a product that is not suitable for your skin, it obviously increases dryness. Sometimes it increases sebum production. Other times, unfortunately, it clogs the pores. This situation, along with minor imbalances, can unfortunately turn into fine lines on the face over time, even spots, and above all, dull-looking skin. So, using the wrong product actually has a much greater aging effect than we think. Let's not forget that clearly knowing our skin type largely protects us from this invisible trap. At the same time, knowing your skin type correctly also has the advantage of making your skincare routine much cheaper and much more effective. Using unnecessary products not only eats into our budget, but also actually alters the balance of our skin. However, the right products do not weigh down our skin, but on the contrary, they strengthen it considerably, especially by multiplying the effect of the treatment. Of course, every product has an important function, but excess unfortunately creates confusion. So this routine, created on the basis of knowledge of skin type, transforms over time into a simple but equally economical strategy for youthfulness. And let's not forget that this strategy very easily guarantees a much clearer, fresher, and even smoother appearance of the skin over the years. 3. We constantly moisturize our lips, because dryness is really one of the most obvious signs of aging. As we all know, our lips are actually one of the most sensitive and fastest aging areas of our face. This is because I can say, the skin of the lips has no sebaceous glands. Of course, this unfortunately makes them very vulnerable to environmental factors. For example, hot wind, sunlight, cold air, air conditioning, and even our movements when we talk can cause our lips to dry out quickly. Naturally, this dryness can turn into fine lines, a dull appearance, or loss of volume over time. In this case, the loss of moisture balance in the lips is actually one of the first signs that weaken the expression of youth. Therefore, maintaining lip hydration may seem like a small thing, but it is actually a very effective rejuvenation strategy. Properly hydrated lips not only appear plumper, but also lend freshness and, above all, softness to the overall expression of our face. Of course, the energy a woman conveys when she speaks, smiles, or even just stands is directly related to the very healthy appearance of her lips. So I can say that dryness very quickly extinguishes this energy and unfortunately reduces all the liveliness of our face in an instant. At the same time, keeping your lips hydrated greatly increases the effectiveness of your skincare routine, as you can imagine. In fact, when we think of chapping or dryness on the surface of the lips, the effectiveness of any product applied is obviously reduced. Lipstick that doesn't adhere well, lip color that smudges, or lips that look much older under makeup are all due to these reasons. Of course, moisturized lip tissue not only makes makeup much easier, but also greatly enhances a youthful appearance and natural shine. For these reasons, moisturizing the lips has a very positive effect on the entire chain, from the quality of makeup to overall skincare. 4. Avoid stress. Unfortunately, it is an invisible enemy that really accelerates aging. One of the most negative aspects of the world we live in today is stress. I can say that stress is one of the most silent but also most destructive factors of aging. In times of stress, our body secretes a hormone called cortisol, and it does so in very high quantities. Of course, this hormone directly affects the collagen structure of our skin. This means that collagen degradation causes our face to lose tone, wrinkles to deepen, and in particular, our skin to look much duller. Many women may be surprised by this change and think, "I've suddenly aged." However, the invisible cause of this phenomenon is often prolonged stress. Let's not forget that for this reason, managing stress is actually one of the most scientific ways to maintain a youthful appearance. Furthermore, stress not only damages skin tissue, but is also reflected in our facial expressions. And everyday facial expressions that we don't really notice, such as frowning, clenching our jaw, or tensing the area around our mouth, cause very persistent wrinkles to form over time. And most of these facial expressions are caused by those micro-movements that most people make unconsciously when under stress. Of course, our skin is subjected to this pressure every day, repeatedly, and unfortunately, in the end, it leaves a mark. For this reason, strengthening inner calm, truly relaxing the facial muscles, and above all, controlling the breath, become incredibly powerful elements in anti-aging care. As many of us know, stress also reduces the quality of our sleep, sabotaging the renewal process of our skin in a way. I can therefore say that during deep sleep, skin cells regenerate very quickly, collagen production increases, and the skin barrier is significantly strengthened. However, think of a stressed mind. In such a situation, this process is interrupted and insomnia, bags under the eyes, a dull complexion, and above all, a weakened skin structure appear. Of course, when this cycle is disrupted, no matter how many products you use, you will not achieve the desired youthful effect. So, beautiful skin is obviously the result of a peaceful mind. 5. Exfoliate once a week, because fresh skin always looks much younger. One of the most effective and important treatments for accelerating our skin's renewal cycle in a much more natural way is exfoliation, which removes dead cells that accumulate on the skin's surface. Of course, as we age, this cycle begins to slow down, and I can say that dead cells remain on our skin for much longer. That's why our skin starts to look much more dull, lifeless, and aged. However, controlled exfoliation once a week allows us to easily eliminate this buildup and allow our skin to breathe much more deeply. In other words, Our skin feels as if it has been freed from a heavy burden and feels fresher, and of course this allows it to regain its natural radiance. So let's not forget that this simple gesture is actually a powerful renewal mechanism that promotes a youthful appearance. When applied regularly, exfoliation not only cleanses surface problems, but also creates a real order that prevents pores from becoming clogged. This is particularly important after the age of 30 because, as you know, pores tend to grow and become much more noticeable. Therefore, removing dead cells will also help to tighten pores, making our skin much firmer. Reducing the appearance of pores automatically makes the face look much younger, fresher, and more well-groomed. Of course, this effect can be considered a serious aesthetic improvement achieved through regular peeling. In addition, peeling significantly enhances the effect of the skincare products we use during the day. In fact, because the dead layer is removed, moisturizers and serums can penetrate our skin much more easily. This increases the performance of the products and makes the care process much more effective. I can say that peeling not only cleanses our skin, but also acts as a preparatory phase that really increases the effectiveness of each stage of care. And don't forget that, thanks to this treatment, our skin becomes much brighter, much more elastic, and much more balanced. Of course, when performing this treatment, there is one small detail to pay attention to. Sensitive skin, for example, can achieve better results with much gentler formulas, while oily skin can achieve better results with deep cleansing ingredients such as salicylic acid. The important thing is to find the right rhythm without straining the skin, i.e., without altering its balance, and, above all, without overdoing it. Performing this treatment once a week is the ideal frequency for renewing our skin. Unfortunately, more frequent use could weaken the skin barrier. Therefore, when used wisely, exfoliation is actually a very powerful ally that promotes youthfulness. 6. We cleanse our skin in 2 stages. This easily prepares the ground for smooth skin. In fact, one of the fundamental requirements for youthful-looking skin, perhaps the most important, is that our pores are clean enough to breathe and equally balanced. So, if we think about it, makeup, air pollution, and even dirt that settles on the surface of our skin during the day cannot be completely removed with a single cleansing step. However, with a 2-step cleansing routine, we can achieve very effective results. Essentially, what I mean is this. In the first step, for example, we dissolve accumulated residues with an oil-based cleanser, while in the second step, with a water-based cleanser, we can naturally purify our skin completely. When these 2 steps work together, our skin is deeply cleansed and its surface is much smoother. Let's not forget that this is one of the most effective and truly powerful starting points for a youthful appearance. Oil-based cleansers are a gentle but equally effective method of removing makeup and sebum. In other words, this step ensures dissolution without stressing the skin, easily removing residues accumulated in the pores. However, water-based cleansers used alone often fail to completely dissolve sebum accumulations, inevitably leaving invisible residues on the surface. In this case, these residues can turn into blackheads, enlarged pores, and a dull appearance over time. However, because the oil-based cleanser breaks this chain, the buildup that threatens the youthful appearance of our skin is blocked before it even forms. In this way, the water-based cleansers of the second step are like a finishing touch that allows our skin to breathe. Essentially, this phase very easily removes the thin layer that remains on our skin after the oil-based cleanser, and in particular water-based dirt, leaving our skin completely clear and pure. This leaves no residue on the surface and creates a very comfortable and ideal environment for skincare products to penetrate. This environment doubles the effectiveness of moisturizers, serums, and especially anti-aging products. Of course, the real secret to a youthful appearance lies right here. Because, as you can imagine, clean skin begins to use every product applied to it much more efficiently. 7. We absolutely must regulate our sleep, because cell renewal occurs largely during the night. Now, I can tell you that our youth is actually one of our most powerful resources, but also one of the most underestimated. Because our skin, which gets tired during the day, is exposed to environmental agents and needs constant renewal, can only start the real repair process at night. During deep sleep phases, as you know, growth hormones that accelerate cell renewal can be secreted much more intensely. Of course, these hormones greatly promote collagen production and, in particular, ensure perfect skin tissue firming. For this very reason, regular and, above all, quality sleep is, in a sense, the basis of anti-aging care, because youth is actually a process that is built up during the night. On the contrary, when we don't get enough sleep, our skin unfortunately becomes vulnerable to one of its most visible enemies, because, as you know, even one night of insufficient sleep causes the appearance of bags under the eyes, uneven skin tone, and, above all, a more tired appearance of the face. And this is not just an aesthetic change. In fact, increased levels of stress hormones cause increased inflammation in our bodies. Think about it. When inflammation increases, wrinkles form more quickly and our skin starts to become dull much faster. However, regular sleep easily reverses this process and our skin finds the time it needs to regenerate. In the morning, we can wake up looking much more rested. In this way, sleep also plays a very important and fundamental role in maintaining the water balance of our skin. As you know, during the night, our body temperature rises slightly, and in this process, our skin retains the moisture it receives very well. If we can ensure a good sleep pattern, our skin naturally does not miss this opportunity to hydrate itself, and signs of dehydration never appear. As you can imagine, dehydrated skin begins to show wrinkles much more clearly. So naturally, the effect of external treatments also diminishes. And regular sleep, by supporting our skin's hydration mechanism, easily ensures a much fuller and smoother appearance. 8. By massaging our face regularly, we can increase blood flow and regain our youthfulness. Another very important and effective element is facial massage. I can say that it is one of the most effective touches to awaken the natural renewal power of our skin, because, as you know, during the day, the muscles of the face are subjected to tension, stress, and our facial expressions are actually under pressure due to this situation. Of course, this burden manifests itself over time with dullness, sagging skin, and even deeper wrinkles. In this case, regular facial massage relaxes the muscles and greatly increases our skin's ability to transport oxygen. In this way, cell renewal is stimulated and increased. In other words, the skin acquires a freshness that seems to come from within. And let's not forget that the feeling of youthfulness is not a superficial effect, but a real renewal brought about in particular by the blood flow. I can now say that when blood circulation accelerates, the tissues of our face begin to nourish themselves much more intensely. And because this nourishment also increases the vitality of our skin, it receives sufficient oxygen and therefore also nourishment. Naturally, this gives it a much brighter, softer, and above all, much smoother appearance. In addition, the increased circulation achieved through massage also helps to eliminate toxins. I can say that skin freed from the burden of toxins can repair many problems much more quickly, from dark circles to wrinkles. For this reason, massage is not only a way to relax, but is actually a very scientific practice that helps in particular to maintain a youthful appearance. Another important aspect is that facial massage also activates lymphatic flow. The lymphatic system is in fact our body's purification system. In everyday life, it can very often slow down. However, as massage movements accelerate lymphatic flow, they very easily reduce facial swelling and edema in particular. Morning massage in particular makes the facial features much more defined, rested, and youthful. And let's not forget that the tired appearance of a woman's face is only due to the slowing down of lymphatic flow. This massage easily eliminates this slowdown. 9. By washing our face with cold water every morning, we give our skin a freshness that reawakens its youthfulness. Washing your face with cold water is actually one of the simplest and most powerful signs of youthfulness that we can give our skin in the early minutes of the morning. Especially after waking up, our skin is still rested after a night's recovery, and circulation is slow. Naturally, slight puffiness, dullness, or paleness may appear on our face. However, cold water causes an immediate acceleration of this slowdown, and the blood vessels on the surface of the skin begin to contract, especially at the micro level, significantly increasing our blood flow. This allows our skin to start breathing again, and therefore this first awakening makes the energy of youth much more noticeable during the day. At the same time, cold water temporarily tightens the pores, giving our skin a smooth texture. This tightening generally creates a much more ideal base for those who wear makeup. In fact, you can think that because our skin will appear much more even, more alive, and generally much more balanced, we will be able to apply makeup more easily. Of course, since it also reduces excess heat on the surface of our skin, it also causes inflammation to subside. And especially in the morning, when we look in the mirror, the tired expression we see on our face around the muscles, or the dark circles that appear under our eyes, are often caused by slowed circulation, and cold water can alleviate almost all of these effects in a matter of seconds in a very simple way. In fact, washing your face with cold water doesn't just have external effects. If we think about it, cold water also stimulates the deeper layers of the skin, and contact with cold water sends a wake-up signal to our nervous system. Of course, this signal also facilitates muscle relaxation. These microcontractions contribute significantly to making facial features much more toned and truly fitter. Of course, washing with cold water activates both the appearance and structure of the skin in a very short time. And let's not forget that this small stimulus can also create a much more lifted facial expression over time. In addition, cold water has very important effects in supporting our skin's natural barrier. Hot water, on the other hand, can weaken the barrier because it alters the skin's lipid balance, while cold water, on the contrary, calms and strengthens our barrier. Of course, as you can imagine, a strong barrier begins to retain moisture much better. What I mean is that it becomes much more resistant to external agents and significantly slows down the formation of fine lines. So, applying cold water in the morning makes our skin much more resistant to daily stress. Of course, this means that a small habit repeated every day actually turns into a real long-term shield of youth. 10. Eat protein-rich foods, because collagen loves to be supported. Contrary to popular belief, proteins are not only used to build muscles, but are also essential for the production of collagen, one of the fundamental building blocks that determine the youthfulness of our skin. Collagen is in fact the main fibrous support that gives the skin firmness, elasticity, and above all, a smooth texture. As we age, the body naturally slows down collagen production. This results in sagging skin, fine lines, and even dullness. However, a protein-rich diet helps restore this declining production. And if we think about the amino acids that make up collagen, these come directly from protein. So I can safely say that every quality protein we consume is like a brick that adds to our skin's reserve of youthfulness. Now, protein deficiency can increase the rate of aging in our skin without us even noticing. This is because when we don't consume enough protein, the body prioritizes vital organs and, unfortunately, the skin ends up at the bottom of the priority list. As a result, skin repair slows down. Our barrier weakens and fine lines become much more noticeable very quickly. But a regular intake of protein significantly accelerates the healing and, above all, renewal processes of our skin. Cell restoration that occurs during the night, as we all know, can become much more effective with a protein-rich diet. This way, in the morning, our face can look much more rested, much more toned, and in general, much brighter. Of course, high protein consumption not only increases collagen, but also significantly strengthens the skin's moisture balance. This is because proteins are made up of amino acids that increase our skin's ability to retain water. Think of skin that loses moisture. Such skin will wrinkle much more quickly, appear much duller, and be much more vulnerable to external agents. So protein intake will make it more elastic and flexible from the inside out. And let's not forget that this elasticity acts as a real invisible support that maintains the firmness of the cheek area and, in general, the jawline. Ultimately, following a protein-rich diet not only promotes collagen production, but is also one of the fundamental habits for maintaining the firmness of our skin and delaying the signs of aging. In other words, youthfulness cannot be maintained with creams and similar products alone. Without these internal building blocks, no external treatment can be truly effective. 11. Use hair care oils regularly, because shiny hair is the hallmark of our youth. Our hair, which is very important to all of us and whose importance we are well aware of, is like a natural crown that frames a woman's face and conveys the strongest signal of youth at first glance. Over time, due to environmental factors, heat or chemical treatments, and especially stress, the moisture in our hair gradually decreases and its shine begins to fade. Of course, this dullness not only affects the health of our hair, but also our overall appearance, making us look much older. Therefore, regular use of hair care oils, especially because they restore the moisture our hair has lost, makes its natural shine again. In this way, shine emerges as one of the most visible signs of our hair's health. As you know, youth is hidden in this very visibility. In addition, the greatest power of hair care oils is to create a protective barrier around the hair. I can therefore say that this barrier reduces moisture loss and acts as a powerful shield against external agents. For example, factors such as wind, air pollution, sunlight, and even frequent washing very quickly consume the natural oils in our hair. However, as hair care oils fill this deficiency, the elasticity of our hair increases significantly, and flexible hair breaks much less, obviously breaks less, and appears much more voluminous. Let's not forget that volume is one of the most obvious signs of youthful hair. When we use these oils regularly, we also improve the health of our scalp. I can therefore say that a healthy scalp is like clean soil. Just as fertile soil produces much stronger plants, when we have a balanced scalp, our hair can become much stronger. Of course, oils for oily hair nourish the scalp, increase blood circulation, and easily provide the necessary nourishment, especially to the roots. This greatly contributes to reducing hair loss over time and growing new, much more vibrant and thick hair. In this way, youthfulness is restored not only at the tips of the hair, but also at the roots. In addition, there is one point that many people overlook, which is that hair care oils also have a psychological effect. Taking care of one's hair strengthens the bond a person has with themselves and adds a special serenity to the care ritual. Furthermore, slowly applying oil to the hair reduces stress, calms the mind, and makes the person feel much more collected. Of course, this calmness is also reflected in our hair, because taking care of ourselves really increases every woman's energy. And of course, this energy is reflected in our outward appearance, making it much fresher and truly much younger. 12. Pay particular attention to the neck and décolleté, because age is most visible in the most neglected areas. Let's now move on to the neck and décolleté. Although these areas are just as important as the face, they are often neglected in skincare routines. Yet the most obvious signs of aging begin to appear in these neglected areas. Think about it. The skin in these areas is naturally much thinner than that of the face and has fewer sebaceous glands, which means it is much more prone to dryness and loss of elasticity. Over the years, exposure to the sun, incorrect sleeping positions or poor posture, lack of hydration, all these factors cause this thin skin to deteriorate much more quickly, while regular care greatly strengthens this fragile structure. At the same time, it prevents our youthfulness from being limited to our face. Of course, when it comes to this area, I can also say that wrinkles and spots on the décolleté are actually one of the silent results not only of our lives, but also of a lack of care. In fact, the serums, creams and sunscreens we use for our face are often not applied to these areas or are neglected. However, for this reason, over time, a noticeable and marked age difference begins to form between the neck and the face. Now, this difference becomes much more visible in photographs, in natural light. In reality, with a single gesture lasting just a few seconds, we could easily eliminate this difference. In addition, moisturizers applied specifically to the neck and décolleté with anti-aging ingredients greatly relax our skin, make it softer, strengthen it, and in general slow down the formation of wrinkles. In this area too, one of the most critical elements of care is sun protection. Since sunlight damages thin skin much more quickly, the signs of aging naturally appear much earlier. And when sunscreen is not used, sunspots on the décolleté or loss of elasticity on the neck, uneven skin tone, etc., become fixed over time. However, applying sunscreen reverses this process and is a very important step. In fact, regular protection not only evens out skin tone, but also strengthens the skin's structure and significantly slows down the visible signs of aging. So let's not forget that keeping this area young means easily preserving the integrity of our face. As a brief summary of the 12 very important points I have illustrated in this video, I can tell you that youthful skin is not the result of expensive products, but of conscious habits that, when combined silently, form a very powerful whole. So waking up with cold water, accelerating blood flow with regular massages, supporting from within with proper nutrition, or a complete care routine from hair to neck, and above all, cell renewal that lasts all night long. In reality, believe me, all these elements have the same goal: to slow down time and preserve the radiance of our face. Of course, when we integrate these 12 habits into our lives, not only our skin, but also our posture, our energy, and above all, the bond we establish with ourselves undergo a great rejuvenation. And let's not forget that true beauty does not come from the outside, but from the depth of the care we devote to ourselves every day. If you found my video useful, don't forget to like it, and above all, subscribe to the channel. Take care of yourselves and see you in the next video. Remember that women have the power to change the world. Bravely forge your own path and enjoy every moment.